good.
All right. It is 6:32. And with us tonight is Craig Schulte, Ben Peters, Bill Lois, myself, Michael Gary, Mike Roth, Kim Van Beck, and Patrick Knight, and also City Attorney Chris Hood. And there we are. We are all set then. And around with cameras. Is there anyone here this evening for open forum? Right. Good with that? Next we'll move on to the consent agenda. Some of these items were additions today. Did everyone have a chance to look at them? Any questions, comments before we make a motion on this?
No. I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented here.
A second?
Second.
All right. Roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Aye. Bill?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Craig? Uh-oh, now he went mute. I watched his mouth, but thank you.
Yeah, there was cleaning the floor and it was kind of loud, so now we're good.
Okay. And with that, a unanimous on the consent agenda. First item of business this evening, 4th of July fireworks. There's nothing in the packet, but I know that's what you're here for, Kim. Would you like to come up there and join us on that? And then please identify yourself. Did I scroll right by?
No, I didn't.
Not unless it's like really skinny.
Yeah, there wasn't anything. So,
It was a really nice memo.
Well crafted.
It was. It's spectacular.
Yeah.
okay. Maybe if Kim, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kim Linnell, and I am the one of the volunteers that does fireworks for the community. Worked with Bob for last 20 some odd years, and ever since he has passed away, looks like I got all of that fun stuff like the bookwork and the ordering and the, begging for money and all the stuff that goes with that. So here I am.
Okay, Mike.
Hey, what did the memo say?
You want to fill in the rest?
Fireworks are permitted by the state, also approved by the city. So the process, as we understand it, is we have local organizers, or it could be non-local organizers, that want to do a show. They first contact they first get a pyrotechnics license so that they can do a show. Then they contact the fireworks suppliers, talk about what kind of show they might want, what their budget is, an order is produced, paperwork is created by the fireworks suppliers that is then submitted to the city in the form of a permit application, which the council looks at, staff looks at, fire chief looks at, and we say yes, pass it on to the state, and all is well with that step. The city has another role when it comes to fireworks shows. We purchase all the fireworks, and typically we've done that with money that's been donated by other organizations. The Lions being one of the foremost. For a long time, the Lions raised all of the money, like when Bob was in charge and even before Bob was the only guy there. They were raising money for fireworks shows. They would pass that money to the city would purchase directly from the suppliers. And the reason we do that is because we offer insurance coverage for the show. And so it's significantly easier for us if we are involved in purchasing the fireworks than if the supplier has to do it, or if the local pyrotechnician has to do it and come up with their own insurance coverage, which would be quite a bit more expensive. So we save money, we save time in the process by having the city involved in those two steps, looking at the permit application and purchasing fireworks. Right now there's 3 shows that are happening in the city annually, the 4th of July, the Fisherman's Picnic, and then one in December for the holidays. And all 3 shows are, have been, I should say, purchased through the same contract with the same provider in the past. When it was Bob, we'd buy them all at the same time, one invoice, and then they would be stored locally and we'd use them.
2 in 1. Linda's was separate, and the Lions Club did the 4th of July and Fisherman's Picnic, because that was Bob.
Yeah, before the holiday, December one is pretty new. So historically, there was just the 2 shows. We bought all the fireworks and then they were used for 2 shows. Now we have 3 shows, and we also have a Lions Club who said we really need to refocus on our own mission and can't be raising money for and spending our money on a fireworks show for the 4th of July. They're getting some assistance now, and Kim is, and Mike Ryden, who is actually the local licensed pyrotechnician, are taking over the role that Bob was filling. And there are multiple funding agencies involved now that are helping. What Kim was coming to ask for was the 4th of July show. So right now, there's already a funding commitment from, I believe, the chamber for the December show.
Yep.
There's a funding commitment for Fisherman's Picnic, and the 4th of July show is looking for funding commitments. Visit Cook County through Jamada has provided $5,000 for that show. Kim was looking for another $5,000 potentially for the 4th of July show. So that was the ask at the end of the background story.
So you did talk to Linda, and they will supply?
They're up for $5,000.
Sorry, she was supposed to communicate that to you.
In the past, we've always used the Lions Club money and bought one group of fireworks this time of the year, divided them in half and shot both. But over the years, the cost of fireworks keeps going up. And so in order to compensate for that, the supplier that we have would continue, all I do is send in a request for, and tell them I want a 4th of July show. They will put it together, and I always give them the ability to set it up the way they want. So like 4th of July, they'll give me a lot of red, white, and blues and you know, things more patriotic. Fishermen's, they just kind of go with a lot of different colors. So they would send me all in one order, but they would send me 2 different purchase orders, each one telling me exactly what I had for each set. So over the years, what they've done to try to keep as big a show as they could, we would get restricted down to smaller and smaller fireworks, which I could shoot a lot more of, but you don't get as big a show out of it. So you'll notice over the last few years, we've had a slightly smaller finale at the end, slightly smaller boxes at the beginning, which we normally try to shoot something at the beginning to get the show started, you know, and you notice that has been gradually decreasing. Well, with increased cost again, that's gonna decrease even that much more. So that's the reason I'm here looking, because the Lions Club, we used to, I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were. I think we would shoot about $7,000 worth each time, 4th of July and Fisherman's. But because of the increases in cost, we asked the Lions Club to increase that. Well, they said they could, but then they could not afford, or didn't feel like they should afford 4th of July also. So we're hoping that, you know, with the Lions Club, we'll shoot 10,000 at Fisherman's. We'll shoot 10,000 again at 4th of July, and I think we shoot, I believe our budget is 4,200 from Visit Cook County for the holiday parade. So that's always a slightly smaller shot. We don't have near as many people around, so we feel we can get away with that one. But so, like Mike said, if they're gonna give us 5, then if we could possibly convince the city to do the same thing, we would have a very nice show again. Probably for quite a few years.
One of the conversations that had afterwards was possibly some software or operational stuff that will make it easier for you to shoot off the fireworks.
They have a program, we can go to a full electronics fire. Uh, When they get the equipment, right now, most of their equipment is out. If I put in a request, it might take a year or so to get the equipment, but they will supply it all. All the mortars, all of the, electronics, they'll come up and do a schooling on it for us. Yearly cost, I think rental, she told me was like $50 a year, so it really was minimal. It's a little bit safer system. Still takes about the same amount of people to put it all together. But in the meantime,
Okay,
we're one of probably 3 places in the state that still shoots manually.
okay, so that's what you're aiming for, it won't be this year.
That's our goal, unless they all of a sudden come up with the equipment.
Mhm.
Yeah, then it's just a matter of changing the order out to electronic fire versus a live fire.
Okay, and that also, I guess, obviously safer is better, but also it allows just for better, more
Yes.
timed.
Yeah, you're not dependent on weather and any other malfunction that tends to happen at least once every time we shoot, so if it's not raining, the fusees quit working, or if it is raining, they put the fusees out, or we have to keep everything covered, if it's wet. Problems we've had in the past, excuse me, we dig our mortars in, usually in the morning, and we put in, let's see, 22 mortars, I believe, plus the volley mortars that we use. So we dig all those in, and the problem we've had in the past is being able to keep a control on those so that, not so bad at 4th of July, but at fishermen's picnics, the kids think that because there's these nice little round tubes in the ground, they should throw rocks in them, which becomes very dangerous. So eventually, against what some of the other volunteers want, we are gonna go to electronic fire.
Well, if there's only 3 of you still using it, common sense tells me that we should go where everyone else is at this point, and safer is better.
Yeah, so I'm still working on that program with the fireworks company.
And it's certainly not a cost issue.
No, not at all. It's a product supply issue.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Well, not the product, it's the equipment issue.
So do
but-
you have to send it back and forth each year?
Nope.
No, then you just pay your rental?
Yep, I
Oh,
just pay the
okay.
rental, I keep it all, it'll stay in the dynamite shack where all of the fireworks are kept. I think the only 2 keys for that place are me and the owner. So, there's no problem there. Our other issue is some of our mortars are starting to get old, so, we'll need to eventually replace those too, so. But if we go this other route, then they supply all new mortars.
Anyone else have questions?
So the ask is $5,000 from the city?
That's
Yes.
right.
Well, I would propose that we do $4,000 from the city, and then I'd like to donate 1,000 from the Meiji Moose.
That would be wonderful. We don't, for us as volunteers, we'll shoot anything you'll give us. That's our goal. If we're gonna go there and our budget for the year is $1,000, that's just the show you're gonna get. So, so more is better.
Is that a problem? Could I do that?
I don't think so.
No, they used to raise, years ago, I remember businesses giving money, especially towards the 4th of July. Maybe it was the chamber, I can't remember. I know the Lions Club always took care of the main shooting on August. But they also asked for money too, so sometimes you gave money to that. I know I always sponsored, me and Mike's Holiday always sponsored the printing of the Lions Club tickets. And then other businesses helped sponsor a lot of other stuff that the Lions Club was doing, but the 4th of July, I know the Grand Marais State Bank used to sponsor the 4th of July. I think they did it all by the,
Has given us money in the past.
Yeah.
Now I know they
Yeah,
do
right,
fireworks.
right,
but-
right.
Yeah,
I
you're
I
right,
would think a lot of businesses would wanna do that, but.
I do, especially fishermen's picnics, so many businesses are either like we always ran the fishing contest and, there's,
Right,
the Lions Club really isn't the main driver of all the programs and activities, and a lot of businesses do. But they do go around and ask for dollars too. I think they've not as much in the last couple of years, but I always feel like between the busyness of it all and what they do, you get a little sensitive sometimes for businesses, for them.
There's a lot of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Though it's always appreciated. Like even donating prizes for the, which they don't do anymore, but they used to have like prizes for the bingo tent. Now it's cash, but
right now it's cash.
yeah, and fishermen's picnic tickets, a lot of the prizes are donated. Anyways, we're getting off track, but
It takes a lot of
No.
manpower to do that, to
Yeah.
go and,
Yeah.
round up money like that. It's, a lot of people think that's a real simple thing to do, throw an ad out there that says, hey, help us out. I have tried to get donations of plastic bags to put over the top of the mortars from businesses and been turned down. I mean, it's like $7 worth. So, anyway, I've purchased them myself and we've all put some money into it just to make sure everything is safe and works the way it's supposed to, so.
anyone else have any other questions?
No, so, Kim, so what you're saying is $10,000 puts on a display that, I guess we're accustomed to having on 4th of July, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
based on today's,
What we were accustomed
Based
to
on-
having probably 10 years ago. It would give us back
Right.
to that original display. I mean, it's been gradually getting smaller all the time.
okay,
So we shoot a lot of smaller stuff off because they're cheaper, but, we have the capability to shoot, more 6-inch and more 5-inch, which, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but the bigger the shell, the higher it goes, the bigger the flare is.
Wow.
So, as you see a few of those during the fireworks display, most of them are most of them are 3-inch, so they're 300 feet high. The 6-inch is 600 feet high, and its diameter is, of course, almost 3 times larger than a 3-inch, so makes a much better display.
I know Linda said she spent over $8,000 for that last Thanksgiving, Christmas thing. I mean, she said she'd already upped the money then.
Yeah, I think they're at 4,200 is where they are for that one.
She said it was more. Oh well, whatever.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I know that all of the money, no matter who does it, because we're shooting as a municipality, there's a whole different set of rules through the state. A lot less rules, let's say. If I were to come in and if Mike and I were to come in and shoot as a licensed pyrotechnics company, the cost would probably be 4 to 5 times more than it is now, and for the same show.
okay.
Probably for the money then. Would anyone, an additional donation would anyone like to make a motion for, donating fireworks and at what amount for 4th of July?
Well, I'll make a motion to, what was it, $4,000? Is that what,
That's right.
you already, yeah, you already have five, so that's nine. If Ben wants to contribute 1,000, that's 10. I'll make a motion for, donate the 4,000, but I have a question. If you want to look ahead years to come, and there's people who want to give money, then who or what account do you have that this money can go into to be used for this, for the 4th of July fireworks? Is that something the city's gonna handle that account? Or is that, you want a private person to handle that money? Because I think that, with some, I think with the awareness that people might have about budgets and what's happening to this kind of thing, we obviously want to keep it going. And so maybe there'll be other people who want to give money maybe for next year, So I'm just thinking how that can be handled.
Well, on that same note, it could go the opposite direction. So
Yeah.
people could decide they don't wanna give money, then we're gonna be back in here asking for this, for the
Right,
5,000 again.
Well, Craig,
right.
we can hold the money. It might not be that we're the right people to hold it, but we certainly can. What we can't do is
Okay.
ask for it. And
No, I'm not saying we ask for it. I'm just saying if somebody wants to give
someone-
$500.
If someone's asking, if someone's actually wants to coordinate the asking part, they might be better to figure out how to work with them and a local bank to hang on to it,
Right.
or maybe the
Set up an
chamber.
account, okay.
Chamber would be a perfect entity to do something like that too.
Yeah.
So we'll be involved in
Right.
whatever way is helpful, but there might be a better fit.
And I know
Okay,
I
just-
talked to you a little bit about this too, and as someone who's sat and greeted the public for quite a number of years, we all know that there's no other events here in town on 4th of July, but it's a common question. And obviously, most people are headed out to the West End, which has its own thing, but not everyone does, and there's still plenty of people looking for something. And the last thing I remember was a kids' parade, and that doesn't even exist anymore, which maybe could with a safe walk.
Yeah.
Maybe they would have interest, but anyways.
Yeah.
So then we said informally as a try maybe this year, and especially with our Canadian neighbors, could we informally to try to see what we could do? And I did ask, could we maybe have a golf scramble at our golf course? Could we maybe get the pickleball group to have a little something, because they're already playing back and forth, same with informal volleyball. I just thought, could we just get a try without making it really big? And then make sure we invite, and Dave Tierstig also mentioned that because the 1st is their holiday,
Yep.
they tend to come down and stay that whole time, and he thought it might work really well. So maybe if this starts to have a little something to it, then maybe there can be an organization and some, organized better, like where's the money go, or maybe the asks are easier to make. If we can, we don't have to make another huge thing, but things start small and maybe they're helpful to kind of have a few things. Or even if some food trucks could be gathered in a spot, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've made one ask, I've got a couple more to make on that, so give it a whirl.
I got halfway through a motion about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Yes,
well, I
yes,
would,
sir.
I would
Yeah.
second either one of those, so either Ben's or, because I think we have
Okay.
one up
I have one, 4,000 by the city.
Yeah, I think Craig's is the one we recognize.
So a second
there.
for
So I'll
that?
second Craig's.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All right, I'm gonna start with the roll call. Craig?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. One more thing accomplished, sort of.
Perfect.
So when I did those applications last year, nothing had to be sent to the state. That was just a template. It just had to stay here. They didn't wanna see it.
I send I send something after the fireworks are shot. I have 1 week to send in
Is it that?
a safety report.
Okay.
That goes to the state.
Mhm.
As long as I have, Mike Ryden's signature on it, he is our licensed pyrotechnics guy. I've been doing it for many years, so I'm the paperwork guy, he's our licensed guy. We work together just to make sure this happens and eventually he will work into that part of it too, the ordering and all that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, this is
We
just
just
the
make sure we get
initial-
the paperwork sent in.
The initial application, which is now online, just needs to sit here with the city according to the state's website. And I did that last year, which is easier.
Our biggest issue is once I place the order, so I call in, talk to the rep that I have there. She puts together a package for me, sends it back to me, I make an approval. Once I send that request in, this last time they said they sent it before they got paid, and we had a few issues with payment. They normally won't do that, so they like payment ahead of time, and they'll send it. They've always, you know, they don't like to not let a fireworks display happen. So they really do work with me, but as long as I can get it into them 2 weeks before we need it, we're in good shape.
Oh, then we need that application completed. In this case, who's doing it? The city, I guess, huh? I mean, before it was the Lions Club, of course.
Well,
I mean, for the,
I'll call.
not the purchasing, but the actual.
Application.
Yeah, that's just a form that you fill out for your own.
Right,
Yeah, it might not be.
Yeah.
well, but we're supposed to have it.
Yep.
And that's what Patrick was supposed to,
Yeah, it's supposed to
well,
stay in
then
your
we're
records,
supposed
I
to
believe.
approve it. And then we had to mess up with the checks last year. Okay.
So I will go ahead, I mean, if this is what you wanna do, I will go ahead and get this all ordered and so that they can put the program together.
And we'll communicate to, I don't know if it's VCC or Chamber, but
It's Mallory, either way,
yeah,
event coordinator.
we have a person. Okay. Thank you.
Alright, thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
next
Ken.
up, Sawtooth Bluffs.
Well, thanks for having me, everybody. I'm Mitch Travis. I think I've met most of you in some way, shape, or form before, but yeah, I work in the role of the Parks and Trails Coordinator for the county. It's a half-time position. You know, just kind of tasked with doing the duties of the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission. So yeah, I got a lot to bring forth to you today. So we did a survey back in February for the Sawtooth Bluffs just to try to gauge community interest. Kind of somewhat serendipitously, this other issue with a parcel that is adjacent, that is private ownership, that was in some way kind of dedicated to be an acquisition of the park. Has kind of been going back and forth with the county board as far as what's gonna happen with it. Yeah, and so I guess just to jump right into, well, maybe I should give a little context first. Try to make sure my screen, see if I remember how to do this. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I mean, Sawtooth Bluffs has been kind of an issue that's been going back and forth for quite a while now. I think the original park plan was kind of started back in 2015. And, you know, essentially it was kind of a guideline for what we could do with it. You know, as you guys are familiar, we did kind of submit that to the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission to see if they deemed it worthy of, as, you know, feasibility for a regional park. And so kind of the reason I'm here today is just to talk about the Sawtooth Bluffs and what the city might be interested in as far as kind of reinvigorating the joint powers agreement. And this kind of document the process for developing Sawtooth Bluffs is kind of why. So on the left, you'll see in blue, without Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission, we could develop the park. It's kind of a more of a herky-jerky process, which would require a kind of a lot more involvement for each piece that we build. Versus in green, we could kind of plan it all and then piece by piece kind of develop it a little more quickly. And you know, just kind of, I guess to kind of get down to the meat of the matter for the sake of brevity. Once we kind of get through the planning process for what Sawtooth Bluffs could be, it would kind of quickly put us into this little bit of a feedback loop where we could just kind of continue to choose components of the park, bring it to Greater Minnesota, and they would, you know, essentially block off legacy fund dollars to complete the project versus like if we build a piece on the left-hand side, we just kind of got to do it, you know, one thing at a time, and then we're back to the drawing board, going back with figuring out agreements between city and county with each component. Where if we did it with the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission, there's a lot of those benefits. And then just to kind of highlight, you know, what the property we're talking about. You know, another reason this is relevant, as you can see, is, you know, the city of Grand Marais property kind of is the gateway to the, you know, the entirety of the parcel. You know, we've got the city property in blue. As it stands now, I mean, as it was originally planned, access was, you know, slated to come in somewhere off of Fifth Avenue down here, get access up to here. You know, the plan did include things like a campground, disc golf, mountain bike trails, hiking trails, other things like that. But just so you're aware, we're not locked into any of that. It could all change if we, you know, agree on different things through the joint powers agreement. Additionally, you know, all of the property that's outlined in blue, it's also city jurisdiction. So, I mean, even if we as a county wanted to develop it, I think we'd still be coming to the city for, you know, your blessing as to what we would like to do with it. And again, you know, just to highlight why this is, you know, coming up a lot more in the news cycle for us is, you know, Mr. Sheaf has been granted this access, approximate access on this yellow line here, through a judge's ruling that happened last August. He intends to develop this property if the county cannot acquire it from him. So we're kind of trying to figure out a plan for that as well. You know, if he wants to build the road, he's entitled to do so, but, you know, obviously it could interrupt some of the plans we had set aside for it. Yeah, so.
Just so I'm not making any assumptions,
Yeah.
when I look at the beginning of his road access, I'm really looking at the towers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
so
an existing road and-
that road access actually just skirts below the southernmost guy wire for that northern tower.
Okay. And then if we look at that bottom with the little skinny part, where exactly is that, like in relation to the hospital or the dog park? I don't know.
Yeah, so dog park is right up here on the corner there of the Gunflint Trail. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. That's where that is.
That corner.
Yep, and then, yeah, just to the west of the hospital is kind of where this skinny part is. As I said, kind of access was slated to be somewhere around here, but, you know, obviously that's all subject to change.
You mean the main access to it?
Well, from the south, you know, in the plan, there was also some discussions of having an access hub up off of Old Ski Hill Road.
Okay, that's what I remember from earlier discussions, was
Yeah,
more
that's what I was
things on the top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, as the plan stands right now, you know, like, again,
Yeah.
nothing's set in stone, but I mean, you know, a lot of kind of the campground area was kind of set to be on below the ridge. A couple of things like the disc golf course, you know, some hiking trails and things like that with, you know, some single track trails going up the hillside with, I mean, the only people who would really be accessing it up there would be the mountain bike trail folks or anyone trying to get on the hiking trail. at this point. But, again, as I kind of intend to show you through some of the survey results, I mean, we are getting a lot of feedback from the community about preservation of the hillside rather than kind of doing larger, more intensive projects. You take that for what it's worth.
That's worth a lot around here, and the minute you
Yeah.
guys brought this, well, the minute Thompson's house went up, I started hearing from people, cause they don't always know what's city property and what's county
Right.
property.
Right.
But I think that's very true of this
Mm-hmm.
community, I don't think that's an off statement at all.
Sure.
But I thought, and this is where, listening to Tim Kennedy a long time ago about this, I thought some of that was really slated to be on the upper,
Yeah, that was my recollection too.
not in the lower part
I
of this.
think I do have,
The last version of the plans that were done, the master plan showed a driveway coming in from Fifth Avenue, just
Yeah,
above
I
the
mean-
city's reservoirs, and I think the idea was that there might need to be utilities extended for some of these uses, and of course you gotta come from down there to do it.
Sure.
But that's just a bubble drawing,
yeah.
it's a long ways from a design.
Well, and that's kind of where, I mean, we're, trying to reinvigorate the discussion a little bit is, if this isn't what the community wants, we as Parks and Trails Commission feel it's important to set it aside, cause if a commission changes, or commissioner changes and, things could be voted away fairly quickly for sale or, whatever use is desired, so we don't necessarily have to develop it. It could be something that we have a very low, impact on. It doesn't have to be intensive trail building or anything like that, so.
There were also conversations at the time about from the top joining this over to Pincushion, is that part of the conversation too?
I mean, I think that's part of it. Again, some of the feedback we received was, we've got a lot of these amenities already going on at Pincushion. Do we just want to create more of an access trail? And yeah, certainly that could be a conversation. I think we'd have to nail down exactly what that access would look like. I don't think there's an uninterrupted access route where, like state or federal land that we could come up with an agreement on, but potentially, yes. Did I hear someone about to say something?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, again, just kind of showing a little more of detail of that sheaf access that he intends to use. We talked about this already. So our survey was fairly brief. We just asked 9 questions regarding park development and then 5 kind of trying to get to the heart of the demographics. I broke it down, into kind of folks who were full-time Cook County residents, part-time Cook County residents, frequent visitors, and folks who visit occasionally. People from the Cook County area seem to, recognize that we had a plan for the park versus folks who are not from here didn't have so good of an idea about it. Just kind of right off the bat, how likely are you to visit or use the regional park if it's developed? Almost, 58% of full-time Cook County residents were either likely or very likely to use the park. And it just kind of goes up from there, the further away from Cook County you get. How important do you think it is to develop a regional park in Cook County? And, you can take this for what it is. There's gonna be folks on both sides of the argument. Some folks just see other things as a higher priority, like housing. I would say Grand Marais and the EDA and HRA are doing a lot of strides in that regard, I think a lot of folks too are also afraid of, costs incurred to the county, through developing the project. And if we use the Greater Minnesota Path, we wouldn't be using local funds for a majority of the development of the park. What other features did you want to see in the park? This was kind of the common ones were down here, where I just selected a bunch, walking, hiking trails, mountain bike trails, ski trails, and you could select as many as you wanted. Some of the other common responses were, we wanted to see some motorsports. A lot of folks wanted to see green or green space or low or no impact. Again, focus on housing. Good contingent of folks wanted to see more winter sports available. You know, some folks were talking about glade skiing and maybe even having, you know, a revitalization of the ski hill was a discussion. Some folks wanted to see climbing, beginner mountain bike areas, picnic areas were also discussed. Yeah, so you can kind of look at this in your own time, but essentially what I did was I just kind of took all of the comments from section 4 and highlighted them with, you know, if I received more than one, I would put an asterisk next to it for each one I received.
Just for space, that, is it Sheaf?
Yeah,
That piece of like how far out, is that like a mile at a time?
it's pretty close. So actually that flagged alignment is about 4,000 feet of road he would have to build along that access route to get back there. It's a lot of property. It is about almost a mile walk back in there. Well, in and out, I should say.
So if I go straight down on 7, am I a mile out, a half a mile out?
You're a mile out. So
Okay.
the Cook County's section of the map that's outlined in light blue is the width of a section. So it's a mile.
And then his just goes beyond it a little
Yeah.
bit. Okay, like, man, is that half a mile? If I divide that in half? Okay. One individual handed me some model, I don't know if that's, I guess model zoning language, I guess it would have been, talking about view setbacks when you start to develop on a site like that. And is that something that could be practically incorporated into some of this work, just knowing the topography? Like, I think even just that, if you had the lower entrance, and I think of that when it was the ski hill, or now it's the runoff and whatnot, nobody sees that at all if you're standing there.
Kind of, yeah, I mean, I guess to give some perspective, right below Sheaf's parcel is right about where like Kim Peppelham's property is. It's almost, directly north of her property. You can actually see some of those buildings from the top of that ridge there. So it's fairly far west of town.
It's not in the city limits, for instance.
Just outside.
Just outside the city limits.
Yep.
Well, or even just straight up. That is interesting, you think it's a straight thing, but we already don't see some of the houses that are there now. They're fairly close, obviously there's one we do see. But it seems to me that that's something that some of these things could potentially happen with that in mind, how they're laid out, right?
Right, and I guess maybe it's important to point out that, regardless of what happens with Mr. Sheaf's parcel, I mean, all of the other property is still, the park plan still exists, so these are separate but related, issues.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I was jumping around, I just meant all the property that.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to
Since
get an
it's
idea of
currently owned by the
distance.
city and the county, that gives us the most control over what happens there. And the idea of developing it as a park is certainly the least impact idea of doing anything up there. I think of, Pincushion's pretty high intense trail development, and you really can't notice it from below. So I'm sure there's a way to do that here. If that's what the community wants to see, is not much at all. This is a good path to go down.
Well, and like, I think if I heard the stats right, it's a pretty high percentage of local people that would be interested in utilizing it. It's not just something, a draw outside, not to say that it does seem to be the trend of where people are spending their recreation time. It's a shift, but the biking and whatnot is certainly.
Right, and I mean, as we go on, we'll kind of cover it a little more, but a lot of folks talk about, well, it's just another amenity for tourists, or it's, it's not gonna be cost effective for the taxpayers, or, like congestion and traffic and safety were other issues, I mean, if the city is, bumping up against issues with congestion, of events and things like that, well, there's an opportunity to create some green event space up there to house some of the things that you guys do in the city often, as well as the county, you know, I mean, and, you know, again, just to point out that there's nothing set in stone about what the plan is at this point, it's just that was the idea back then. We could come up with new ideas as to what, you know, what we wanna do with it.
I have two comments.
Go ahead.
That I would, and I'm not opposed to more trails, but it seems like it's always easy to build trails and there's money available to build them, and then we struggle like hell to maintain them. And eventually it always does come back to the taxpayer to figure that out. The other part with joint powers is we do have several joint powers agreements in place with the county that we're working through. What does that look like to add another? And that's more of a question than a comment.
That is a question that you as a council have considered from time to time too, in the form of what are your priorities? And the other ones have risen to the top of that list, whereas this one is not yet. Still good to keep talking about it as an issue, and you know, there will be a time when it's ready to move to that step.
You mean move to an actual agreement?
Craig, I know that Mitch had a chance to present in front of the park board. Anything from that meeting you wanted to share?
No, we had the same,
Mitch, if I could have you stop sharing your
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, we had the same, presentation, probably more thorough. He went through the whole, was that 2016? Is that when that first was created, 16 or 18?
Yeah, I think it was kind of started in 2016 and finalized around 2018.
Yeah, we went through all of that. We went through the, surveys that were done. Yeah, I don't know, there wasn't really any decision made by the park board other than that it made us aware of, you know, what could be new ideas and what the old ideals were, and it all ultimately comes down to the city council and moving ahead with something or setting up joint powers agreement with the county.
And I don't mean to interrupt.
I guess that was, yeah.
I just wanted to say, you know, I mean, at my opportunity to speak at the park board, I kind of recognized that I didn't really ask for anything, you know, and I mean, seeking a recommendation from the park board should have been something I did at the time.
I don't think we need to do that. I think it was fine to just inform the park board, and that's all we're doing today too, is keeping the council up to speed. There's no ask yet.
Sure.
No, I was just asking.
No, I
if
just
maybe
think it was more,
Yeah.
it was more informational, you know, to bring this whole thing back to the surface again, because there's been people that have changed out on some of these boards now and stuff, so it's just to wipe the slate clean and look at what was actually on the docket at that point in time. Yeah. So it was more of a discussion and a showing and a viewing, you know, to us.
And Ben, your concern was definitely high on the list of concerns then too, when the last version of this master plan was done, that it might be a lot easier for us to find funds to build than it would be to continue their maintenance. And so there was a model that was discussed then, which was there wouldn't be anything developed that didn't have a designated user group that was behind it, that was gonna be maintaining it, that was going to be planning it, working on getting funding for it, if in cooperation with us maybe, but also on their own as well. I mean, that's no guarantee that that issue doesn't exist in the future, but we did start developing the property that way even before we had this conversation finished with the dog park. It's kind of our model for how that might work. It's a local entity, they raised the funds to do the improvements.
Yeah.
They have a contract with us that says what they're responsible for and what we're responsible for. It's really been pretty painless for us, and it's been a good service, and I think we were hoping that that model would work, where we could have user groups that are developing features. That way, it's not an amenity for tourists only, it's something that there are people here that are passionate about that wanna work on. And if not, then it won't happen.
Well, and
Yeah.
to speak to that just a moment too, like, I mean, you know, another part of the reason why I'm here is, you know, I think it was the desire of the city that, you know, the county kind of had this project and, you know, to show a little good faith. They wanted to see that someone was in this position, so here I am. Additionally, you know, the county did put $30,000 in their budget to, you know, start the process of planning, you know, and so trying to be efficient with the use of those dollars, you know, and trying to bring it back up to the surface and, you know, see if we can put the money towards that use or if we should dedicate it to something else.
And that money would probably be spent on taking what we have that we're calling a master plan, turning it into what is an acceptable master plan to get regional designation, like we just did at the rec park.
Right.
Okay.
What do you think that would cost for that, that survey work to be done? I mean, the rec park was it 60s?
It was more than 30 by quite a bit, and
Yeah. 7.
yeah, I think part of that is that the property has a lot more going on right now. So there's quite a few more details to put into maps, for instance. But we also had a master plan at the park that we were modifying, whereas in this case, it's all kind of fresh and new. So my guess would be quite a bit more than 30, but we should go out and ask somebody if we want to know for sure.
Does access to those legacy fund dollars on a project like this, does it compete with some of the other aspirations that we would have for those funds?
Yeah,
at our-
absolutely. Compete with everybody else who's legacy fund.
But you're talking
Seeking.
statewide.
But also, if we've got 2 regionally designated sites locally, we're not gonna get money for both of them at the same time. They're competing with each other for sure.
Yeah.
But these are asks, incremental asks? Is that what I'm reading from your chart? Like,
Yeah, I mean, like, you could, you know, a component of the park that you have in your plan would be something that they would dedicate the funds towards, yeah.
One piece,
Yeah.
kinda like we're doing with the rec park, right? We're
Yeah,
focusing-
incremental is one way to look at it, but when we're thinking about what that means, we don't wanna go with a small ask. We wanna go with as big an ask as we can come up with at the rec park. And that's what Dave and Park Board's gonna work on this year, is figuring out, okay, in our capital improvement plan, what's the next thing? Probably Bathhouse 3 and the rec hall being reconstructed, and then what part of that is worthy of an ask? And
But that's incremental, cause that's not the whole master park.
yeah, it's incremental because I don't think the legacy funds would give us money. I don't think they have enough money to pay for everything that the rec park would do, and we're not expecting the state to fund the whole rec park. We're just looking for some recognition of its regional significance, which we've received, and
But there's certainly another layer to that when you have a competing property that you're also gonna try to be looking at.
Right, so it just meant that, you know, maybe like the park is focusing this now and maybe another year they're doing, you know, kind of
Yeah,
a little bit that way.
I see,
here and
so
there.
just
yeah.
That's all I meant.
not in the same year.
Well, for sure the timing would need to be worked out, and I think there's no problem with that because we're the owners of both, and so we get to decide about the timing.
Yeah, I do, you know, I mean, if we wanted more information on that, I do sit on a commission with the director of Greater Minnesota, and I could, you know, maybe inquire as to how they dedicate those funds, you know, from year to year, but their pockets are very deep, you know, so, and I know that it was just voted, you know, the legacy fund was voted to be, you know, continued, so.
So we have to continue to buy lottery tickets?
Doesn't seem to be a problem with that.
No.
No, it's not that difficult.
Seems like it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we wanna continue?
When you say development, this landowner, what do you know what type of development?
He is currently subdivided it into 8 lots intended for residential use, to my understanding.
How many acre sites are those? Are those?
I believe they're 10 acre,
It's
10 acre parcels.
It's Yeah, it's 80 acres total.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So he's got, alright.
You got a map of there on that. There's a map of it.
And you guys have, what I read outside of this, he has a price he's willing, I mean, he's willing to work with the county, he just wants this, at this point, it's a price.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously being a businessman, he didn't wanna lose on his investment and kind of the agreement that, you know, what he paid for the land versus what the Minnesota Land Trust was going to give him for it was, you know, a third of what he paid, and so he obviously was looking to break even at the very least, and at one of the more recent county board meetings, a price of $475,000 was thrown out, and my recollection is I think by, if it's December 1, I think that first payment has to be issued on that, to my understanding, so.
Otherwise, the purchaser is the Minnesota Land Trust?
No,
No.
Mr. Chief has said that well, there's been a lot happening, I mean,
Oh.
he's also seeking to possibly make it into a scientific and natural area, possibly looking to sell it, but he's still got, you know, he has a lot of road to build and a lot of utility line to lay before, you know, those would be, really developable for kind of your standard home.
Yeah, an awful lot.
You know, 4,000 feet. Yeah. I did that already at Chemo Lake. I know what that's all about. It can be done.
So you do have a timeline with him, though, to be able to work, the county has a timeline with him?
The
That has to
time,
be worked
yeah,
out?
the county has a timeline essentially to kind of let him know what their intent is, and with some funds being dispersed by December 1 was my understanding of of Mr. Sheep's desire, so.
Has anybody looked at the wetlands on that yellow line?
I've been on the Sheep's parcel, a couple of times, once with Mr. Sheep and once with a couple of commissioners, and, it is all developable, I mean, you could there's 8 good
Yeah.
build sites.
I'm talking about the
road.
road right away.
Oh, yeah, oh, yes, I walked that with him, you know, on that day that we met up there too, and there are some wetlands, but, you could work around them, I think the bigger thing that my expectation would be is like, they'd have to have a pretty good stormwater plan in place for a road of that size with that amount of material. I mean, you're talking about almost a mile of road and probably several thousand cubic yards of material.
All of a mile by the time you get across this property.
Right, but yeah, I mean, just to speak to the wetlands piece, I mean, there are some impacts that would occur, but nothing extensive.
I assume we'd wanna see a delineation though before any of that happens. I
Yeah.
assume we'd wanna do that as part of the master planning process, for instance.
Maybe, I mean, most of the hillside, once you kind of get below the northern, you know, I mean, it's a big ridge, you know, kind of once you get on the south side of the ridge, there's not much wetlands to speak of. There are some kind of down near the reservoirs there, off of Fifth, where, you know, kind of just west of the dog park, I think that would be the bulk of the impacts to develop the property would probably happen there. You know, but again, if we're just putting an access road in, maybe it's only a couple thousand square feet and something I could administratively deal with as, you know, also the wetland administrator for the county, so.
What, I mean, you have your diagram, but what is the next immediate step for the county? Is it just a focus on that property, or is there another?
That's kind of taking its own trajectory, whatever happens with that will happen. I think, you know, I'm, you know, just here because this $30,000 has been set aside and we have you know, we'd like to start dedicating some funds within the budget year and figure out what we should focus on. However, I mean, as you can kind of see, we're kind of handcuffed until a joint powers agreement occurs. I can't really go making big plans with anything as far as, you know, what we wanna do until we get buy-in from the city, you know, start appointing the joint powers board to kind of steer it. And I guess, you know, that's another thing to maybe denote is that joint powers agreement kind of lays out, you know, appointing this joint powers board. And they kind of then steer the ship as to what's gonna happen with Sawtooth Bluffs.
Is that
We
where
used to have one of those.
What's that? We used to have one?
We did.
What happened to it?
Well, they stopped working on this because it wasn't a priority.
Okay.
But
So
I mean,
does
this
that
was,
mean that
this last plan was developed by a board of people that were appointed by the city and the county, very much like what we're talking about. What
Yeah.
I'd say the next iteration of the joint powers board would be.
Wait, so can it just be revived, what we had?
I don't think it would be a lot of work to get, the joint powers agreement updated and looked at, if that
Okay.
was something that was important for people to work on.
Gotcha. And so does that happen on our side or that happens on?
Well, I think we wanted it to happen on their side. That might be a lot to ask right now with transitions that they've had in leadership at the county. So,
Yeah, I would acknowledge that as well, like, you know,
Yeah.
how that would happen, I'm not exactly sure, but, you know, again, the money's out there and we should kind of feel like you know, some desire to figure out which path we should take, you know, and if it's not towards this, then, you know, we have a comprehensive trails plan and, you know, as been mentioned, it's, you know, we recognize that trail use is, you know, it's one of the big draws in Cook County, especially in the winter months, and we've got an aging population of volunteers, and I think, you know, one of the things that the county has highlighted is that there's a need for more of a central entity to kind of manage all of these amenities that are getting used very extensively by visitors, and, you know, just making sure that we don't lose those amenities that we have in Cook County, because, you know, we just don't have a lot of folks to keep them up anymore, so.
I think the chicken egg argument about should we do the joint powers first, or can we do that after we've developed the plan a little more? We've gotten stuck on that, and I don't think it's necessary for us to get the joint powers completed
Okay.
to work together to do a master plan on the property. If that's something that was interesting to people, we could go back and try to get some more information about what would that scope of work look like, and what it might cost, and how it might get paid for, and come back with some information like that. We don't have to do the joint powers first.
Okay.
Is
So we
part of the.
could-
That's okay. You might be asking the same thing.
No, it's fine.
You know?
No, you're good.
Well, I'm just wondering what I mean, I got Ben's points, which are really good. Is that the main hesitation to in joint powers? I mean, what is the hesitation of not?
I think the only hesitation was it wasn't anybody's top priority, so we worked on other things.
Okay, I thought maybe there's some key item.
I don't think there was really any disagreement about how it might work or what we might do. It was just a question of resources. Is this what we want to spend our time on? And that's kind of the question that's still on the table.
Okay.
And the county saying they're asking it too, and if we're willing to be a part of this, they'll keep looking at this, and if not, they're gonna spend their time on something else too.
I didn't know if like part of it joint powers got into maintenance costs, or, got into that detail level, so I thought, well, maybe that was a reason why it hadn't moved forward. I mean, so then the main piece is potentially that the county is, which we've known from our other joint agreements, as a little buried right now. So maybe, do we know if they want that to rise to the top?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so, I mean, the Parks and Trails Commission is just an advisory commission, and obviously, we've been getting a lot of feedback through surveys that, okay, we should work towards preservation of this, and, this sheaf parcel has kind of brought that into the spotlight is, well, if we don't do something with it, we run the risk of, some future change in that landscape, and not to say that that's going to happen, but if preservation is what we're striving for, we can do this through this process. So it is multifaceted, I'll agree, but it's, I think that's kind of one of the main drivers is just, if one, it's on our comprehensive trails plan that we should be carrying it forward. And two, I think there's some folks in the community who kind of see an urgency in preserving it.
I would say
So-
there's more people in the community that are interested in housing development than there are preserving.
Which I don't see as an either or. 'Cause
No,
it's
maybe
like a-
not, but when you
Yeah.
commit the land to some purpose or some joint powers, then you are ceding some of that authority over that.
And the
Oh, I see
housing
what you mean,
question,
like that particular land, got it.
the housing question was also front and center, both the last time this master plan was worked on and really the first time it was worked on in 2000 as well. And even at that time in 2000, they identified the spot on the property that was best suited for development was in the southeast corner. And I think that was kind of even more, put a fine point on the last time we looked at it and be inside the curve of the Gunflint. And it has been used now for housing, it has been dedicated to and is being developed for.
Right.
And that's the most suitable because it's not very high up the hill, which is good for the folks that are concerned about views, but also because that's where the utilities are. And it would be fabulously expensive to try and bring the utilities anywhere else on that property.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to get to, like, we don't set, is there something we should be doing, or is it getting back to the fact that, like, we haven't moved the rest of the joint powers conversations forward because we're understanding that, and I know you're just an advisory group, but because right now the county's just waiting to get a full-time administrator back and just kind of get back to
Yeah,
normal or what.
and is it that, the 30,000 you mentioned, is that money gonna go away, or, I mean, so it's in the budget now, so it was budgeted for this year, or it's just a holdover from before?
No, it was budgeted this year for this kind of specific use. It was Sawtooth Bluffs, kind of whatever iteration of development or planning that we wanted to use it towards.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's worth us at least gathering a little more information about how we could partner with the county to use that money and what it might take for us to be a part of that before you have to make a decision about whether this is
Mhm.
time to set this down or to reinvest in it.
Yeah, I would be interested in finding out more.
Yeah, I think just by the nature of having Tim Kennedy on the council before, we were kind of more aware of some of this than.
Well, I think he wasn't he on Parks and Trails? I mean,
Well, no, there's been different versions of that too, right? And he's actually been on the state's version of it, and the county's version of it, and the joint city and county's version of it as the council. Yeah, so yes, he definitely kept it in the forefront. Even then, when the council was asked to make priority decisions, this wasn't a high priority for them.
Got it.
So the last time you were talking about your priorities, you looked at this and you said, well, it's not a high priority in the sense that housing is, but it's not off the table either. And so the way I interpreted that is if pieces come together where it makes sense to work on this, we might want to do that.
A lot of it sounds exploratory anyways at this point. I mean, you had a plan, and then now potentially need to create a new one. Seems like we should be at the table with that, not.
Yeah.
Right.
And whatever information we glean from residents or whatever, we should just be a voice, not there. It wouldn't be helpful, I don't think. That's why I was wondering if the park board had any thoughts that way. whatever.
The park board, and I think it makes a lot of sense to keep them informed about this. We've also tried to make our staff available to assist in limited ways about this. But your concern, Ben, about the costs of maintaining this, I think there is a sense at a staff level that we don't wanna take on more of this than we're capable of right now with our existing staff, even at a planning level. And I'm sure the park board is imagining, are we gonna be asked to maintain this in the future? And that's not, nobody's asking that right now, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not inconceivable for that conversation to occur, so,
It happens.
yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be
It
planned out.
happens, for sure it does.
Well, and there's a lot, within the master plan process for Greater Minnesota, like, the whole operations and costs and all those sorts of things are kind of laid out in that whole planning process, and so they're not keen to give dollars unless you have a real, good idea about how they're gonna be spent.
To me, that helps with the local competing interests, because we're ready to go at the rec park. We're gonna have an ask ready this year, and there's no chance of that occurring at Sawtooth Bluffs as fast as we could possibly move. It's not gonna get close to that.
No, we would have to go through everything you just went through with the park, rec park is essentially what we have yet to do. So it might be more than a couple of years even if we started today.
Well, and who are the people that look up on that hill most of the time? It's the residents of this community, not that everyone else who doesn't come and go looks too as well, just like you're always looking at the lake, but I don't know, at all sides, it just seems like we should be at the table on this conversation.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. But it would be nice to hear officially from the county commissioners what they view, cause they are in a busy time, like what are they,
Right,
where is it sitting for them?
It is an interesting time, they're focused a lot on hiring an administrator, and I think, Rena is keen on leaving this decision to be made for the next administrator.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just here doing the tasks assigned to me and trying to inform you guys and see where your guys' interest stands, and to keep you informed, so I thank you for having me.
Bell Tree Board, they looked up at some of this property on the hill, right? Does that have any crossover at all that you think of from all that work? Or-
I don't think they really got deep in the woods looking physically. I think they used remote sensing and things, but yeah, I think they'd be interested in preserving it as a natural area or a green space.
Okay. Well, as we know, as Ben pointed out, our other joint powers agreements haven't had much traction this year, so I would assume we might not hear anything in the immediate on that, but
No, but
the potential is there.
Yep.
And,
there's always next year.
Well,
oh boy.
And two, if the city is at all interested in, just writing up an agreement to figure out how to plan it, whether that's to hire a landscape architectural firm to, kind of kick off the process for us too. Maybe that's another route, as kind of Mike was saying, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything I can?
Well, I take that as the rest of us here in the council are good for right now, for things to ponder, and
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this to us. though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's helpful.
yeah,
It's a good.
it's an interesting thing to get a herd of people moving in the same direction, and so, if there's anything I can do, just let me know, where to
Could
find
you
me.
send that survey over to Patrick so we can,
I feel
I
like
don't think I've seen that.
The PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah,
No.
just
Yeah.
the survey results.
Survey.
that
Yep.
you guys did. I'd be
Yep.
curious to read
maybe
that.
I just saw them.
Yeah. think he has them.
That would be helpful to have that.
And when are those survey results from?
We started in February and kind of ended it in early March.
So now?
It was like
Now.
3 weeks,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Okay,
was
okay.
recent,
All right,
yeah.
then I must have-
Yep, and that was just,
And then you didn't fill it out.
No, I think I did. That's why I
Just
thought.
teasing you.
no. Yeah, we did get pretty good response, you know, we got about 480-ish responses and, kind of across the spectrum of interest. You know, I think we barely show that, you know, the percentage is slightly in favor of, but, you know, certainly it's gotta work for all of the community, so.
What were the like, just real quick, like percentages of respondents that were local versus?
Yeah, that's a good
And I'm
question.
sorry to pin you.
No, no, I don't know if I have that right off the top of my head, but I think it was like, let's see. I don't know if I have that right off the top of my head for you, Ben, but I think it was like, I wanna say it was like 280 locals versus other, you know, and like part-time residents, you know, were here like less than 180 days a year. I was,
Okay.
you know,
Broken
I have it
down
broken
because
down, but I don't
okay.
have it
Yeah, yeah.
immediately available.
Oops, my computer went to sleep. Okay, so we're good with that? Alright,
All right.
thank you
Yeah,
very
thanks a
much.
lot, everybody.
It's nice
Thank
for
you
you to
very
take the
much.
time. It's always helpful to have a conversation. Alright, I believe that was our last, I gotta get up to the top here, that was our last item.
Yep.
If I could get the thing to work, I'd just go to page 1, but,
Yeah, that'll work for you.
alright,
If you had a piece of paper, you just turn.
council, and I did, right here. I left my piece of paper home today. Council and staff reports. Anything right?
Oh, yeah, was there anything, Ben? I can't remember. Oh, yes, it was Bjorkberg 2.0, back again for another round. Yeah, Bjorkberg came to our meeting, and was there, I mean, all the same stuff from before, with some changes. They were looking, what they took away from what we all said in the council, the two things that they took away were, looking at the infrastructure coming in and out, or coming out, I guess, of their property, going to other properties around them, that had been one of the issues that we had brought to them. And they had a plan, they had an idea of how to address that. You know, they were going to, well, the idea is to have easements for adjacent properties, to hook up to their utilities. So still, but, so in this way, it would come in from that southeast corner. And then they would allow for it to go different places. And they showed a couple of spots where people had made mention, I think, that they were interested possibly in hooking up to utilities. And so they showed a couple of places where that might happen. The challenge we ran into is there wasn't a full explanation of what that would look like and how that would work. Like who pays, who maintains, how much it's gonna cost the adjacent landowner, et cetera. And then the other thing that they offered too was to pay a flat amount of money for the development of Third Street. They kind of took the total that they had seen that we had gotten and took like a quarter of it and said, okay, we'll pay a quarter of it. And Ben, what else do you have to add to that?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear it back. I would say, well, first I'll say that we have another meeting with them
Yeah,
next week.
yeah.
So
So
the
we did
reason that
not
they're
come to
here
a
today
conclusion.
is because
Yeah.
we didn't,
I watched
we
them.
wanted to.
You watched the movie.
Yeah. So we wanted to hear more about those issues.
Yeah.
You know, there's an opportunity, obviously, as there always is, for some questions or feedback or whatever. I mean, I think everybody has been involved in it. We've all known about it. So
Yeah.
if you wanna ask some questions about it, we can certainly have those questions, for the developer. The planning board is very key, like, we wanna make sure that we vet this thing in the best possible way. So that if it comes to the city council, you know, we give you a good project that we feel like it's vetted. So, the easements were a question, the money on the road is a question. There was another question about how this money, they have some rural monies available, some grant funding that they can buy down the price of some lots, 5 homes.
Yeah.
There was a question of whether or not they're going to use those or not. Be awesome if they did. So I think there was some conversation about that, and overall, that's where we're at. More-
Yeah, I
more to
mean,
follow.
they did, you know, want to really like push it through to council, but it really wasn't ready.
I
And,
don't
and
think it
it,
would've gone well, yeah.
yeah, and they didn't really, it wasn't as complete as what we had received before. So there were some missing elements that would have been nice to see, that just weren't there. So they are, so yeah, we adjourned without taking any action, and they're gonna come back next week, for another go-around.
So
I think so, right? Is that still
That
on?
is,
Or we
that
think
was how we left left it. it. Uh, Uh, is the current plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
I do not yet have their further developed information. I know they're working on it.
okay,
I've asked for it by this week to give you some time to look at it before next week.
Yeah.
So assuming that happens, then yes, we're on. If that doesn't happen, I'll let you know.
yeah, and what's our, it's the 60-day time frame. Where did that start?
Not that long ago.
Oh, okay,
We don't
so
have a
we're-
concern about
okay.
timing yet.
Yeah,
If
alright.
they do manage to provide you information and you are able to make a recommendation next week, there's no need to talk about that. If they don't, then we will extend it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, this is their deadline, it's not the planning's deadline, it's not the
That's right.
council's deadline. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping
we want a good
that
project,
they
right?
take the time to get the information and not rush to meet a deadline that they have imposed upon themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
It
Yeah.
felt like the information that they presented was a little rushed, because they did leave out a number of details about, you know, stormwater and et cetera, right?
Yeah,
Like, there were some
stormwater,
things
that
were
was
like,
pretty
maybe
glaring.
just thrown together quick, thinking, I don't know, it
Yeah,
went through here
whatever.
before, it'll go through again, but,
Yeah, so I just hope that, because it's their deadline, it's nothing we need, it's not the 60-day, whatever. I hope they're doing what,
Yeah.
giving themselves the time
yeah.
to get what it is they need.
Yeah, and conversely, we
think-
did the same thing, we wanted to make ourselves available as a planning board, because we want, we're aware and sympathetic to, like, hey, there is a building season, there are these things that we, you know, if we wanna
Yeah,
be, you know, business friendly and development friendly, we wanna, you know, coordinate, but.
Well, and I did listen to it, and I did hear the last comments, to which he said they still had a lot of work just even on financing to, they're not ready to put anything in the ground yet, so. And we have a developers agreement to work through, right? So
yeah,
this
Yeah.
is not wherever, there's still part of steps, so I know what you mean about the seasonality, but I don't think they're close no matter what
I
happens or
agree,
doesn't
it's just
happen.
what we heard, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, yeah,
but I think they also heard from us, and they heard from council even last time, there is support for the idea generally. We just need to have certain things addressed, so I think that they did hear,
Yeah.
like, yes, but.
well,
Yeah, and it was
good,
good.
thanks for all of your work.
No, it was a good meeting, it was a long meeting, it was a good one, yeah.
It'll probably be a long one on Wednesday.
Well, maybe not,
Might
maybe,
be a
it'll-
real
Or
long
maybe
one.
not,
Might
then maybe
a
it'd
real
be,
short one.
yeah.
yeah,
Don't know yet.
Anything else?
No, that was,
Library
was-
board or anything?
nope.
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 All right. Bill?
Well, we met with the Arrowhead Animal Rescue last Thursday and going over the agreement with the city. I think we're really close to working out the final details, and they seem like they're in a good spot with that, so. And we meet again as a group tomorrow.
Anything else?
Well, I went to the planning and zoning too, and we exhausted that, but yeah.
Okay.
Planning and zoning, and we, let's see, we've got a North House meeting on Thursday, board meeting, and then, of course, next Wednesday, HR. So, nothing else to report.
Okay, Craig?
Yeah, we had a Public Utilities Commission meeting May 7th. And the items on the agenda were water plant control modifications and the wastewater sludge management. And what that boils down to is our water management system has some malfunctioning electronic components to it that need to be, I guess, updated and made into compliance so that they can work with Scott Warner's computer, so it'll all talk with his computer. And there's quite a few things on that list that will help the water treatment plant operate more efficiently. That's part of the issue he's having with bringing things on board to function better. And the other part of that was the wastewater sludge management. And basically what that is every time we extend our sewer lines, I guess, or, we have to make application to the MPCA. And when they do make application to the MPCA, they look at our sludge levels. And if our sludge levels aren't being monitored correctly, we're in violation. And so he worked out a different program to how to manage the sludge levels, more flushing of the sludge, and which has definitely helped between moving the sludge between the clarifiers and getting it ready to where it has to be hauled. So he came out with a plan that he has implemented with the people that work at the wastewater treatment plant, which is working quite well, and looks like we're not having any issues like we had before. So Scott seems to be on top of a lot of things, and I think it's a good guy to have working at that facility right now. It's been working out really well. Anybody have any questions on the technical issues of that?
I read those
If you do,
summaries. I think that's great. That software, whatever you need to do, it's the right thing to do.
yeah, it's expensive, but it was installed by a company that has to come back and do it because it's kind of like one of those private rights things where you got to use them to get access to the system. And once we get access to the system, we'll be able to do some of that stuff in the future by ourselves with just, probably some consulting rather than actual putting a technician up here for a week to work on things.
You just have to get updated, right? You just gotta,
Right.
yeah, and then you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. The other meeting I had was a Parks Board meeting, and campground opened May 1st. And I guess we're looking at a very busy, big Memorial Day weekend. They're already sold out. Dave, like Mike had already mentioned tonight, Dave has been meeting with Mike Fisher from LHB to discuss the bathroom project, and also with that is the parking area there, the trailhead parking area. And so if everything gets put together correctly there, we can actually make application to the Greater Regional Parks and Trails Commission. That application closes in July, and I think we haven't ruled out making that deadline. I guess we'd like to make that deadline. Let's see. what else did he have to say here? He already had the meeting with the Gitchagami Trailhead parking lot people. That was on the 12th. The marina needs a new gas pump. The gas pump broke down, and so we're getting a new gas pump installed at the marina. That was one of the repairs that we talked about, and also our our utility cart that we use to drive around town and to work on and do things with is over 20 years old, and I think they're looking towards purchasing a new cart. It's a Yamaha cart, and that was one thing we're going to replace in the park. Let's see. That's about all I have with the parks report. Um, Everything is going well at the golf course. I'm not sure. I'm sure that opened by now. I'm not sure what the opening date was on the golf course.
Opening date's Friday,
Okay, it's this week. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So get up there and shoot your golf before the sandflies carry you away. Hope it's dry for a little while. Well, I want rain for the fires, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
it's always fun to golf in the spring. No bugs, and things are usually in pretty good shape. So
Good, thank you.
yeah. So I guess. Thank you.
I apologize, I couldn't make last month's, our last meeting of family issues, but, let's see, so did the opening along with Ann Sullivan for the, annual emergency services. You were there for part of that, yeah, for that. I've had 2 meetings for the North Shore Management Board. One was more local internal one, and then we had our regular quarterly meeting. There's lots of conversation about board purpose, how to move forward, how to have money to fund itself. Just bigger conversations than I've had in a while with them, including their management plan revision. So I anticipate, well, we've actually decided to meet monthly for a few months to get some of these things worked out. So it was a little bit livelier than most. Brady Powers asked to meet with me down here, because I'm often running the, East Precinct for our elections in the, commissioner's room, and he wanted to know if it would function well down here. So we met down here, and of course there's measurements for distances and where everything has to be set up, and they were really excited and says that would fit perfectly. So we'll very possibly see the East Precinct elections be handled down here for the city and not in the commissioner's room. And part of that has to do with some changes in equipment they're using and the need for them to work more efficiently to be in the commissioner's room when they're doing the rest of the county and counting, and some new balloting machines. So that's kind of exciting. Lots of people want to use our new space, and we also hosted the community leadership meeting the other week, and like that went well. Basically, it was around the room asking how different groups, the hospital, whatever, the city, the county offices might be affected by the changes in fundings coming at the higher levels on down. So that was the kind of just a round robin informal on that. Went to the cannabis. Were you at? I couldn't quite. Were you?
I
Okay.
had another meeting.
All right, so I went to that this morning. Not much for us relating to the city because we're pretty well prepped. What I did discover is the county has yet to put in their events ordinance. So that's.
Well, we got ours.
Yes, I mean, like we're
They could copy it.
kind of all set.
They can, not only can they, but we also said to Jean if she would like to spend some time talking to David, who wrote our ordinance and some other cities' ordinance, we'd be happy to make that connection.
Yeah, so.
But they've got their hands full up there.
Yeah, right.
So most of the conversation came from Health and Human Services and programs that they're running for tracking and all of that. But other than that, and then there was talk about when to meet again, and if even July being busy time would be a good time. I think they decided they would.
They would anyway.
I think so. I have to remember.
Okay.
I could do whatever. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's everything. There we go. and everything I forgot. Thank you, everyone. We are done for the night. Thank
Oh,
you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a good night.
thanks everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Corey.